Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and today we want to continue our introduction to the book of Obadiah by talking about the Edomites and their history. Obadiah is the shortest book in the Old Testament, and it almost solely focuses on judgment for the Edomites. As we said yesterday, the Edomites are a related people to the Jews. They are descended from Esau. And because they were related, God did not allow Joshua to make conquest of the Edomites. That's recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 7, chapter 2, verses 5 through 8. It was not permitted. Although it is also true that in 2 Samuel chapter 8, beginning with verse 14, David takes Edom for Israel. And we're told in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 14 through 22, that Solomon exploited the resources that were available to him in Edom, and the resources were plentiful, because the Edomites who lived in a mountainous region in southeast Palestine, south of the Dead Sea, lived in an area which was rich in copper deposits, and so they were quite a prosperous nation, although they were a very small nation. They inhabited a mountainous region that was only about 20 miles wide and about 100 miles long. They did have a port city, Bozrah or Bozrah. It's called Bozrah in the book of Psalms. They only had 3 cities to speak of. They had Selah and Timon, and then Bozrah. Selah is was probably on the site of what is current-day Petra. Petra, the ancient city that makes its appearance in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. If you remember that, or if you've ever been there or ever seen stories in National Geographic or something about Petra, you see how red the rock is and what a mountainous area that is, so much so that they built the cities into the mountains themselves, and that seems to be the way the Edomites had built their cities, except of course their port city of Bozrah. They were also known in ancient times for their wisdom. In fact, in the book of Obadiah the prophet mentions their confidence in their wisdom and also in their mountain strongholds, and says none of those things will protect them from God's judgment. So they were a very small nation. They had this history, with the children of Israel that goes all the way back to the difficulties between Jacob and Esau. They're the smaller nation, the weaker nation, and yet they are descended from the older brother, and I'm certain that they had not forgotten that. And so they were continually enjoying misfortune that befell the children of Israel. Just a couple of Edomites that make an appearance in the biblical text. Eliphaz, Job's friend, is from Timon, which is one of their major cities. Eliphaz the Temanite is one of Job's friends. And then we have Doeg, who is just called an Edomite. And in 1 Samuel chapter 22, he kills the 85 priests who helped David out by giving him showbread, and he's working as an agent of King Saul. We read yesterday from Psalm 137 about the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, and how in Psalm 37 the Edomites were there to participate in that destruction, to say, tear it down, tear it down, tear it down to its very foundations. And God's going to judge them for that, and he judges them for that here. In fact, that judgment was predicted in the book of Amos that we just studied, in Amos chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. And thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not revoke its punishment, because he pursued his brother with the sword, and stifled his compassion, and his anger tore continually, and he maintained his fury forever. Therefore I will send fire upon Timon, and will consume the citadels of Bozrah, which is their port city. So they participated and did not show compassion. In fact, we're told in Jeremiah chapter 40 that when refugees from the southern kingdom of Judah fled to try to find safe haven in Edom, they were turned away by the Edomites. And so God is going to bring judgment upon them. And he does, in a variety of ways, obliterate them from the annals of history. We only know about them from biblical sources and other outside sources because nothing they wrote and nothing they built survives. It's gone. And it's not because they didn't have writing and didn't write things down. They were known for their wisdom. But nothing that they wrote and nothing that they built survives. It's gone. We know about them because of external sources and the biblical text. It's also true that they may have survived in terms of their DNA, their progeny, but as a people they ceased to be. They were conquered by the Nabateans. In fact, that conquering is described in Malachi chapter 1, verses 2 through 5. God tells us that he made good on his promise to destroy the Edomites, and they are conquered by the Nabateans. And the Nabateans are Arabians. Now, Herod the Great, and the Herods that we know, Herod the Great in the New Testament, who was the Herod, who was the ruler of Judea when Jesus was born, was an Idumean. Now, as you notice, Idumean and Edom sound like they come from the same word, and they do, because the Idumeans are the people who inhabit the old Edomite realm, and they are a people who have of mixed DNA heritage. They are the old Edomites that survived the conquering of the Nabateans, and some of the Jews that survived the Babylonian captivity. And so they are a mixed, ethnically mixed people. The Idumeans are, and Herod the Great is an Idumean. So one could make the argument that some of their DNA survives, but we're all carrying around a little bit of Neanderthal DNA too, so we consider them an extinct group as well. But God, as he tells us in Malachi chapter 1, made good on his judgment, his irrevocable judgment upon the Edomites because of the heartless way they treated their brothers whenever the Babylonians invaded. We're going to get into the text tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 Good Minutes with the Word.